Hi everyone, Zachary Lui here from Toronto Qigong. Today I'd like to talk to you about chakras in reference to Qigong. Now, before I can really get in depth in this topic, we have to understand what chakras are. Chakras, from their literal translations, refer to circles or spinning circles in the body from an Indian Hindu paradigm. Now, this is their system of energy work in India, and with these spinning circles, you can almost call them way stations or even power stations, which then once you work on them, though they have associations with them that are very specific, once you build them up to a certain point, they will start to disperse the chi or the prana through a network called nadis, which is similar to webbing in the body, or a netting, which kind of gives you life and functionality. So with that understood as a definition, how does this relate to Qigong? Well, let's get into a little bit of history here. Buddhism, as a religion and philosophy, originated in India. And since it originated in India, it took a lot of principles from the Hindu system of work. So you see various things like meditation, chakras, things like this. They get pulled out of the Hindu system, put in a new paradigm or system of thinking, and when Buddhism then goes into China, the Chinese start taking Indian philosophical tangents or even techniques and adding Chinese characteristics to them. Now, you have to understand, China itself was quite a storehouse of information. It worked its own techniques, paradigms, philosophies for centuries. And India was a almost sister country in reference to China, where it had its own traditions and things like this. So when we start getting this mixture or trade between two cultural separate paradigms, you start getting really fun but different techniques, because the Chinese start combining things as they usually do. So this is where we get things like Buddhist Qigong, for example, that pops up. For more information on that, look at Buddhist Qigong, a brief overview for the video. So when we're doing these characteristics, we start getting the Chinese to do things such as three Dantian theory and connecting that to the 7 chakra networks. Now, technically, there could be more chakras, but the general overview is 7 chakras. And then the Chinese view these chakras in reference to the Dantians. So there will be maybe a bottom chakra connected to the lower Dantian, and then you actually have a chakra in the lower Dantian, and then you have a chakra above the lower Dantian, and then it keeps going up that way. So they start becoming almost way stations. With that understood now, what does this combination of techniques do? Well, we have to make a few assumptions. If we're going from a lower Dantian or a Dantian model, we're trying to take this agrarian take on, let's make a harvest, and we want surplus. But what the Indian model does is it gives us finer techniques and finer processing abilities to their associations. On top of that, not only do you get to harvest or build up the energy, you get to process the energy in a certain way, but then you get to store this refined energy in from a Chinese model. In the Indian context of chakra work, you do something similar, but it's different, and the emphasis isn't so much on the storing of information, it's more just cleaning out your system. Now, because of this overall paradigm now, I need to actually go into a few different paradigms in Chinese culture for energetic techniques. I'm going to introduce really 2 models in this video. One is already what I talked about briefly, being the Dantian to chakra model. The next one would be the Dantian to meridian model. Now, the meridian model is native to Chinese philosophy. It's connected to rivers, and the Dantians could be viewed as reservoirs or oceans. Everything in Chinese culture generally works on movement, change, and harmonization and smooth flow. So we could view the lower Dantian, middle Dantian, and upper Dantian as places as oceans, and then these meridians start becoming river networks. And as you get more surplus in the oceans get, say, more energy from a practical standpoint. Overall, you have to flow all those resources to other places because the rivers are connected to the oceans. So by default, if you raise enough energy, store enough energy in the lower Dantians, you're going to start to flow or overflow the rivers. And the good thing about this particular model is you don't consciously have to focus on certain associations or even care how the networks move around. They almost self-regulate themselves naturally as, again, a river will flow from the ocean into another lake, etc. Things like this. So it's all self-regulating. The problem with this model is your quality, because though you can really build up a lot of energy and you can flow lots of chi through your body, it doesn't exactly give you quality of chi in reference to, say, you're working on specific issues like sadness or anger or being too energetic and things like this. Though we can do that from a meridian standpoint, we would actually have to do meridian Qigong at that point. Instead of doing that overall, we're just going to focus on the lower Dantian, and then this is just going to happen naturally. The other problem with this model is, well, timing. Qigong assumes you're going to be doing it every single day, and it's much more of a water effect, because if you gradually build up to, say, an ocean, and you keep adding more and more water, eventually things are going to dilute. You may not have conscious control of it, but something's going to happen eventually, because water flowing will eventually break down a rock or smooth it out. This is how we view your internal issues from a native Chinese philosophical standpoint. If you add enough surplus, something's going to happen eventually. Now, you can control these various things. If you really want to do minute details, you start going to, say, the acupuncture points, or you start doing meridian associations or organ associations, which we do have in Chinese culture. But it's much more, you have to separate the thinking from lower Dantian, upper Dantian, and middle Dantian to you actually need to work specific metaphors in terms of the meridians themselves or the organs themselves and their associations. Now, that said, let's get in depth with the chakra to Dantian metaphors or the use of these techniques. So, when we're doing chakra and Dantian work, it's much more of a centralized idea. And when I'm doing this surplus of, I'm bringing in lots of chi, and then I'm going to really work these certain chakras by their associations and their colors, maybe even their sounds, things like this. Well, it's fairly easy just to gain lots of energy in a particular Dantian and then really break it down minutely, because it starts becoming almost a damming effect. You're not going to release the dam unless it gets to a certain point. And then when you do release, you can ebb and flow the control network from that point. But really, it's about how do you build up the chi in that lower Dantian, middle Dantian, upper Dantian, refine the emotions in those particular Dantians, and then let the distribution network work. Because in the Dantian to Meridian model, we're working on a transportation and movement model. It doesn't give you a surefire way of quality control. And with the chakra model, you do get quality control, but then you have an issue of things like distribution networking, or how the chi flows, or that prana flows through the body. Because just because you have a good centralized access through the Dantian networks and the chakra networks doesn't necessarily mean that you're going to distribute the flows to the extremity points in the body, such as your hands, your feet, your eyes, things like this. Where in the meridian model, we are focused in that. So then actually you're going to start feeling more sensations through the body as a whole, rather than a central part of the body, which then spreads. So what's the positive parts of the Dantian to chakra network paradigm? Well, we get to really work and hone certain associations. So, for example, if you have emotional issues of the heart, such as relationships and that, you can really focus on that heart chakra and middle dantian. If you have like base level insecurities such as like fears of finances, things like that, great. We can just really work on that root chakra. You got willpower issues, sacral chakra, all in connection to the various dantians that they're connected to. The problem now is you don't get that distribution. So the effects may be a little bit slower in terms of a physical whole of you're trying to get something. So these two models both have their pros and cons. And with that, you just need to apply which tool to which issue and then get a certain solution out of it. So let's take a random example just to better analogize this. Someone that does Tai Chi comes from a Taoist background, more so. They're primarily working on a Dantian to Meridian model. Now you find with this Dantian to Meridian model, they're generally going to get more benefits of health, vitality, longevity, and things like this. It's much more of a body awareness. But through that body awareness, you start to decondition emotional and mental things eventually. But it's because you have a physical body that's flexible, that's energetic, your mind and emotions naturally want to work themselves out, and it becomes a snowball effect. This model is a little bit slower to establish. However, once it's established, it's more self-regulating and more self-balancing. You don't have full control unless you actually go through the meridian networks themselves consciously, or the organs themselves consciously. Now, with the chakra model, which is a Buddhist model, the more effects you're going to find is on this emotional and mental level first, because you're really working on targeted emotions, targeted issues where it's like, again, I have certain fear issues, I have certain emotional issues. Well, by working these certain chakras out through the dantians, not only do I get to get a surplus of chi and then recycle it very fast and refine it to a fine point of more or less dissolving the issue as quickly as possible, but through this, because I have more consciousness of my emotions and then my mind, I'm going to want to work on my body. Because if my body feels off, my emotions then feel off, and then my consciousness is going to start to feel off. So both paradigms or models are going to work the same issues in different ways. And the results are going to be slightly different, as I said earlier. But ultimately, there will be a change because you cultivated yourself. So with the Chakra Dantian model, a Buddhist monk, if he was side by side with a Taoist, they would be talking, and yes, you can both say they're cultivated, they're calm, but their demeanors may be slightly different. The monk may be better at meditation, for example, but the Taoist may be better in physical health. The results are skewed to your paradigm. So in terms of practicality, if you're working on more emotional stress level issues, I probably would say go to the Chakra Dantian model. However, if you're working for more vitality, general health, flexibility, work with the Dantian to Meridian model. Both models are equally valid. It just depends on what you're going for. But if you put the time toward both models, you're going to get somewhere with them. But you have to more or less commit yourself to doing the training. This is something that both systems say you have to do. So for more information, go to torontoqigong.com and then subscribe to the video below if you're interested in more videos like this or just information.